Okay, so we are in Daniel. We're looking at Daniel 2. We're going to, in this first part, specifically focus on the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. There's a lot of things going on with just the process of the dream. So let's just get right into what really puts Daniel on the map. And it is in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams wherewith his spirit was troubled and his sleep brake from him, right? So he had dreams that would wake him up out of his sleep. Okay. Then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. Now, again, Daniel and his friends are in this mix of people. Okay, remember they were approved by the king in the previous chapter, and so Daniel and his friends, although not summoned, you'll see this later on in the chapter. Although not summoned, they are very much a part of this group. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dreams. Right, and so the different sects, S-E-C-T-S, right? Not S-E-X, S-E-C-T-S. Sects of the people are magicians, right? So they're like illusionists, astrologers, so they are star readers, sorcerers, so they are like pharmacia, right? The word sorcerer is pharmacia in the Greek, so drugs. So hallucinating, different types of medicinal herb type things. The Chaldeans, which are the people who are sort of the linguists of the group, they're all considered like supernatural arts, I guess you could call them, right? They all are sort of next level philosophers, beyond thought. And the king says he's had a dream. And they say to him, then spake the Chaldeans, this is the linguist group, to the king in Syriac, O king, live forever. Tell thy servants the dream, and we will show you the interpretation. Right, so they start speaking to him in Syriac or Aramaic. And actually, the manuscript goes from Syriac to, from Hebrew to Syriac. So the actual writing in the Hebrew manuscript is Syriac or Aramaic or the Babylonian alphabet from Daniel chapter 2:4 all the way through to Daniel chapter 7. So it's a very unique book, and its manuscript form mirrors its content, which I think is a really interesting thing. And they say, hey, Nebuchadnezzar, tell us what you have going on in your head, okay? And we'll tell you what it means. So that's a pretty like standard procedure, right? They are using materials that already exist and kind of reimagining them, right? The linguists and the astrologers and the sorcerers, like they're all using material that already exists. So no problem, right? Nebuchadnezzar, tell us what your dream was and we'll tell you the interpretation, right? Now here comes the tricky part. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If you will not make it known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, you shall be cut into pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. So really interesting thing going on here with Nebuchadnezzar. He forgot his dream. The dream was bad. It woke him up. But now he can't remember what it was. So he needs his experts to tell him about what the dream was. And if they don't, both tell him the dream and the interpretation, they're going to be killed, and their houses, their legacy is going to be coming to nothing, right? Their houses are going to be made a dunghill, which is to say their legacy is going to be destroyed. And so, and the king has the right to do this. it's a pretty severe ask, to be honest. But this is Nebuchadnezzar still talking. But if you show the dream and the interpretation thereof, ye shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. Right? So he's some serious consequences. Now, I know Daniel's not even mentioned yet, but he's in the group. And so by proxy, Daniel also has these choices. Figure out what my dream means and what it is, because I can't remember it, and be rewarded. It's going to be important later on in the chapter. I'm not ruining anything to tell you. Daniel's going to figure out the dream when the experts can't. Okay, a plot spoiler, but like not really. We're going to get through it, if not in this lecture. No, we will get through it in this lecture. And so the king is asking kind of a hard thing for anybody who isn't God. But again, he's talking to these experts, right? And they answer again and say, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation of it. Right? And they're very respectful. Oh, king, live forever. Oh, we're your servants. They're not buttering him up, but they are kind of like softly treading. Like their lives were just threatened, basically. And they know they're not going to be able to tell him what the dream was in his head. There's no reality where they're going to be able to do that. And they know it. And so, Nebuchadnezzar answers and says, the king answered and said, I know of certainty that you would gain the time because you see the thing is gone from me. Right? He's like, I know you're going to take advantage of me because you see that the thing is gone from me. Like, I know if I give you what the dream is, you're not doing your part. Which again, I don't know if that's fair or not of Nebuchadnezzar. Because it is a hard thing to pick a dream out of someone's head. He's asking for a mind reader a little bit, but he knows what he needs, and they're not going to be able to supply it, and he knows they're not going to be able to supply it. If it's just the interpretation, they're going to take advantage of the situation. He needs the dream. He needs to know they're legitimate, right? Because he knows he's going to remember the dream once they speak of it. And so when they do speak of it, he can prove them, right? It's like, oh, yes, that was my dream. I can trust your interpretation. But he can't trust the interpretation. He can't trust them to not take advantage of the situation if they don't have the proof of what the dream was. That's like a credibility for them, which of course they're not going to like that. And Nebuchadnezzar continues and he calls them out, right? And he says, but if you will not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you. For you have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me, till the time be changed. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show the interpretation thereof. Right? He knows they're liars. Basically is what he's saying here. He's like, I know you guys will lie if I give you the time and energy to do it. So you have to prove yourselves to me. Right? And the Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore, there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asks such things at any magician or astrologer or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king, except the gods, whose dwelling is not with the flesh, right? They're like, the thing that you're asking is literally impossible. Nobody on earth walking can do that. To be fair, they're not wrong. The only one who can do it is God. Daniel himself is going to say this. Okay, Daniel himself is going to be like, this is not me, this is the Lord. Right? So they're not actually lying here. They're not wrong. This is an impossible thing for Nebuchadnezzar to ask. they are saying it because they can't do it and they don't want to die. But actually, even Daniel, who will actually be able to do it, says he's not the one that can do it. It's all God. So it's not like they're completely lying here. But they do need to be a little careful because they're accusing the king of giving an impossible task out. And in some ways, they're kind of accusing him of just like recklessly decreeing murder for not getting his way. Right? And you got to be careful when you accuse a king of something like that. But again, we know that they're talking about their gods, lowercase g here. And not surprisingly, the king doesn't react well to this accusation, right? For this cause, the king was angry and very furious and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. Right? Like Daniel hasn't even been mentioned in the first 13 verses of this chapter, but he is lumped into the wise men. So Daniel, no one consulted Daniel, but he sure got the death sentence put on his head. So Daniel's just over there chilling, minding his own business. Doesn't know anything about what happened. No idea. And then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. Right? Like the king was not kidding. He sent his captain of the guard, the equivalent of Potiphar in Genesis, the person that is his military strategist and executioner, right? He sent his military strategist and executioner to go kill all the wise men in Babylon. Because Nebuchadnezzar is asking them to do this very, very difficult thing that's almost impossible for mortal men. But he has to listen, it has to be done. So Daniel meets the guard and he answers and said to Arioch, the king's captain, "Why is the decree so hasty from the king?" Then Arioch made the thing known to Daniel, right? Daniel had no idea that the king called forth the wise men. He only called the Babylonian wise men. He didn't call anybody from the captives of Judah. He didn't call God's people. He didn't call the Hebrews. He only called the Babylonians. But technically, even though they were not demanded of, because they're still enslaved at this point, they are of the wise men. They're just not highly sought after at this point. That's going to change very soon. So Daniel finds out from the king's guard what happened. And he's like, now at least I understand why I have a death sentence pronounced on my head, me and these three friends of mine, but he's going to do something about it. And so Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time and that he would show the king the interpretation, right? Daniel goes to the king and is like, "Hey, I need a day. I didn't know about this. I can help you out. Just give me a day and I'll come back and I'll do this thing that you're asking." Right? A lot of faith here from Daniel because he doesn't know. He doesn't actually know if God's going to give him the dream or the interpretation. And you're going to see that in a minute. He just goes on faith to try to save everybody. Not just himself and not just his three friends, but literally the entire wise council of Babylon. And so he's really just asking, like, I need some time to do what you're asking. Then Daniel went to his house and he made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Right? And so he is doing an interesting thing here where he lets his friends know what's going on, and he also tells them can we all inquire of the Lord for this dream? It doesn't really matter who he gives it to, as long as he gives it to one of us, so that one of us can go in and do this, right? So Daniel's not even putting the pressure on himself to hear from God. He's giving God a lot of different options. Like, hey, we're all in one mind here. We're all working to the same thing. None of us want to die. What do we think? Right? What do we think's going on? And so then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven, right? So Daniel ends up being the one who does get the vision. And we don't get the details of the dream until Daniel goes and tells Nebuchadnezzar what it is. But we can rightly, I think, assume, hypothesize, that the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision is both the dream itself, so what Nebuchadnezzar saw that woke him up out of a dead sleep, it's the dream, and also it's the interpretation. It's two parts that Daniel needs, and presumably the Father gives him both. And Daniel answers and says, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever. His for wisdom and might are his." Right? He gives this sort of praise psalm in response because God did not have to show up and tell him. Daniel just kind of went in and hoped he would. Right? So God is showing up here in a big way, in that he's not just, giving Nebuchadnezzar what Nebuchadnezzar needs to understand, but he's also saving people's lives, Daniel and the three children included. So blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. That's a fact. You're not going to have wisdom without God. Proverbs tells us that. You cannot have wisdom if you do not have the fear of the Lord. And he changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. This is all true. And this is all stuff that we want to be aware of, because without saying it, one, Daniel's saying that God's in control of everything. Two, God exists outside of time. But also he does something really cool here, which is alludes to the time passing through the kingdoms rising and falling, where he says he changes the times and seasons, he removes kings and sets up kings. It's actually a bit of a foreshadow to the dream and what the interpretation of it is. Now, if you've studied Revelation at all with me, specifically Revelation 17, you already know some of this dream interpretation. Okay, you already know some of what is being said here in Daniel's interpretation. We haven't gotten there yet, but you might already know some of it. I don't know that we're going to get to it today. We might. It might be the first thing that I do on the next one. And so Daniel rightly gives praise and honor to the Father, but also cleverly alludes to the time passing and the kingdoms rising and falling. And he says, of course, "I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who hast given me wisdom and might, and hast made known unto me now what we desired of thee. For thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter." Now, look at the plurals he's using here, right? He's not just saying, "Thank you for me." He's also saying, "Thank you for us. You're giving to me what we desired," right? They're like a foursome, they're a group here. "You have made known unto us the king's matter," right? So they're all in this together, even though Daniel is the one who actually gets the dream. And that is why Daniel goes in, but he comes back and he tells his friends, like, "Hey, one of us needs this dream. Everybody inquire of the Lord." There is power in community. There's power in fellowship. There is power in teamwork and partnership, and everybody being on the same page, working toward the same goal. Right? There's a big power in that, and we see that. especially with Daniel in exile, because it's a hard thing to be exiled in the way Daniel is, and it is important to try to have people on that same page as you. So Daniel is rightly giving God the praise, and there's a bit of longevity here too, right? O thou God of my fathers. And I think there's some humility here, right? He's talking about the lineage that, like, even though we're in captivity, you are the same God of my father and the fathers that have come before. So there's like a history there. And also that, you've given me the wisdom and the might here. Like, you've imparted some of your majesty to me. And, like, I think what he doesn't say is, I don't deserve it, but thank you for it. Right. So there's like a big, this is the right thing, by the way. When God shows up in your life, the first thing you want to do is thank him, praise him, honor him, glorify him. That's the first thing Daniel does. It's a good practice. When he answers your prayer for money, for wellness, for health, for a partner, for a house, for a job, when he answers your prayer, get on your knees and thank him. It is so important. Therefore, Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, destroy not the wise man of Babylon, bring me in before the king, and I will show the king the interpretation, right? So Daniel is again, not just saving his friends' lives and his own, but also the whole class of wise men, because they have not been slaughtered yet. And we do not see anywhere where they actually do get destroyed. And so Daniel, and by Daniel I mean the hand of God here, because it's God working through Daniel, saves everybody, basically. So yeah, that's an important thing. Oh, excuse me. That's an important thing that Daniel is thanking the Lord for, saving a whole bunch of people. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, right? Because the king is mad. And said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah that will make known unto the king the interpretation. And remember, at this point, even though they are esteemed captives, lumped in with the wise men living in the king's house, they are still thought of as lesser. They are not summoned when the wise men are summoned, right? They are not, it's a little bit like where Joseph was in jail. He wasn't quite elevated to Pharaoh's side yet. This part of Daniel is a bit like that. Daniel's not elevated yet. He's just the best of the captives, right? So he's not yet elevated. He's not yet promoted. He's not yet a trusted source of information. That's going to change in a little bit, but that's right now, he's just a captive of Judah who's gotten the approval to do what Nebuchadnezzar wanted. And so the king answers and said to Daniel, whose Babylonian name was Belteshazzar, art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen and the interpretation thereof? Right? Remember, it's two parts, and Nebuchadnezzar's not letting Arioch off the hook, right? Arioch says, I will make known, that will make known unto the king the interpretation, right? Because Daniel himself says, hey, let the king know I can help him with this interpretation. Daniel says, I can help with the interpretation. Arioch tells the king he can help with the interpretation. The king wants to try his subjects and wants to prove them. And so the king is very specific again and says, can you make the dream known unto me, which I've already seen, and the interpretation thereof? Can you do both? Daniel answered in the presence of the king, right? Daniel is now in the presence of the king and says, The secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon the bed are these. Okay, so again, Daniel is giving credit to the Father here. And a little bit, Daniel is, I think, Daniel is actually backing up what the wise men have said earlier on, right? They're like, Nebuchadnezzar, nobody can do what you're asking. Daniel agrees. Daniel's saying, I can't do it. Well, he hasn't said that yet. He's going to say that in a minute. What he says is, your soothsayers can't do it. Your magicians can't do it. The astrologers can't do it. No man can do it, but the God in heaven who reveals secrets is the only one who can do this. The God of heaven is the one who gave you the dream originally. The God of heaven is the one who put that same dream in my head to tell you about, and who is also going to give the interpretation so that you, Nebuchadnezzar, can in fact know what's going to befall in the latter days. Okay, in the end days, not in his time necessarily. Nebuchadnezzar's dream spans thousands of years. Nebuchadnezzar's dream tracks 7 kingdoms, which you should be familiar with from Revelation 17:10. So Nebuchadnezzar is God's servant. We know that from Jeremiah 27:6, right? But so God is making it known to him, and Nebuchadnezzar is allowed to prove his people in the way, but also we don't get Nebuchadnezzar ever killing anybody of the wise men in this chapter, because Daniel also says, listen, the thing you asked is not possible for anybody who is not the Father in heaven. But I had a chat with him, right? And so he does, right? Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. But Daniel makes a lot of really interesting points here. As for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, what should come to pass hereafter, and he that revealeth secrets maketh known to thee what shall come to pass. Right? So what he's really saying here is like, these are your thoughts that came into your head while you were asleep that God is allowing you to know. And in this, even Daniel is trying to make Nebuchadnezzar take a lower seat than the Father. And also trying to kind of, I think, distinguish himself. Like, you had this dream, Nebuchadnezzar. God gave you this dream. I just got it because you asked about it. Right? To really, like, kind of give the disclaimer that this belongs to Nebuchadnezzar. And the only reason that Daniel even knows about it is because of Nebuchadnezzar. Right? Because here's where he's about to put his own disclaimer in. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king, and that thou mightest knowest the thoughts of thy heart. Right? Daniel is saying, I am not smart enough to know this either. And the only reason I'm even able to tell you about it is because of God, and also because you want to know your own thoughts, and also because it's for the sakes of the people that you're trying to kill, right? So Daniel's really trying to give a disclaimer here of like, I'm not that good. The people are not that good. The only person who can give you what you're asking for is the Father, because Daniel, without the Father, can't do it, and he knows that. It's a really smart play on Daniel's part for the positioning, right? Daniel's about to advise a king as a slave. And again, he is very much saving the lives of everybody in doing it this way. And so, he's giving this disclaimer before he actually gives the dream. And the dream should ring off some bells to Nebuchadnezzar, right? So Daniel's setting the stage here. Yes, I have your answer. No, it's not my answer, and it's nobody else's answer, and it's the only one that could have done this is God. And also, the only reason I have this answer is because you had this thought and you want to know, and you're asking, and you would kill everyone if you didn't find out. Right? Because he also has to like cleverly position himself so that he's not that good. He's not better than a king. He's not trying to be better than a king. Right? He doesn't want to like upset Nebuchadnezzar either, because what's going to be shown in this dream could be a little upsetting. It will show Babylonia's downfall when we get to the interpretation of it. And so, he finally, in Daniel 2:31, gets to this dream that Nebuchadnezzar saw. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. Right? So you saw a great big thing that was so bright and shining and awe-inspiring and terrible and magnificent. You saw this really large figure. The image's head was of fine gold, his breasts and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Okay, so he sees this really, really big figurine, like a giant statue, which those are going to come in vogue a lot in Daniel. We're going to see that in the next chapter as well, when he has a statue made to himself, right? Is it in response to his dream? Maybe. I can say that the text doesn't actually say that Nebuchadnezzar made his image of gold as a direct response to his dream. But I think you can draw the parallel. And I think you can make the point. You guys make your own decision on this one. But I do think that it is possible. But this is a great statue that has many metals comprising it. The head is gold. The chest and arms are silver. The like the belly and the thighs are brass. The legs are iron. His feet are part iron and part clay. Now, if you happen to know anything about metals, gold is very heavy. Gold is heavy. It weighs about 19 pounds. And silver is also heavy, a little less, 10 pounds. Brass is 8, iron is 7, and clay is 1. So if you know anything about structures, if it's too top heavy, it's going to collapse, right? If you pay attention to our government, if there's too much government and not enough citizens, it will collapse. That's why people are anxious in the government about birth orders, birth numbers, population. You can't really govern a people if there aren't people. The top heaviness of a thing is problematic. It will cause the whole thing to topple over. It is why we get a lot of discussion on solid foundations, right? Like your character has to be on a solid foundation. Otherwise, it's very easy to fall from grace, right? And that is a metaphor in the same way that Nebuchadnezzar's statue in his dream is a metaphor. And Daniel's going to give us the interpretation of which kingdoms are represented by each portion of these metals. Right? Daniel's going to let us know in the next bit of it, in the interpretation of it. But this top-heavy statue really is not fit to stand, which is going to be the next part. The other thing that we want to be aware of is not only is it heavy at the top and it doesn't have a strong foundation. We also have iron and clay, which can't mix. Iron and clay is like water and oil. It's like communism and Christianity. They don't mix. So not only do you have a top-heavy statue, you also have a foundation that can't stand on itself. Iron and clay cannot mix. So the foreboding statue doesn't really make a lot of sense to Nebuchadnezzar, understandably. Now, Daniel continues with the dream that was seen. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them into pieces, right? So you see a stone that doesn't have any hands. So think kind of like a wrecking ball, but without the crane, right? This thing like smashes into the statue, right? He saw this happen in his dream. This is Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And it smote the image upon its feet that were iron and clay, and broke them into pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold. Notice how he lists them backwards. Iron, clay, brass, silver, gold. Broke into pieces together and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Okay, so Daniel's dream, or I'm sorry, Nebuchadnezzar's dream that Daniel tells him about is this very large, very unsteady, multi-metalled statue that a boulder, basically a stone, comes out of nowhere, smacks into, the whole thing falls to rubble, and this stone now takes up the whole earth. It's magnified so that it is filling the whole earth. And when we get to the interpretation, which we'll do in the next lecture, we're going to see that these are kingdoms. Okay, these metals are kingdoms. They're Satan's kingdoms. We will get a more in-depth discussion on it, but the top of that kingdom, the head of that kingdom is Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, Babylon. And then after Babylon, we're going to get Persia. And after Persia, we're going to get Greece. After Greece, we're going to get Rome. After Rome, we're going to get the Mohammedans. After the Mohammedans, we're going to get the good and the bad figs. Okay, so we have kingdoms that lead from Babylon to the Antichrist. That is the dream's interpretation, which we haven't gotten to yet. Right now, all Nebuchadnezzar knows is this big statue that's smacked by this rock. Who is the stone? If the kingdoms are satanic kingdoms, the stone is the one and only Christ. The stone without hands that knocks these kingdoms over is, of course, going to be Christ. Now, that part of the interpretation we're not going to get. Daniel is only going to interpret the kingdoms. But we know now, at where we are in history, that the stone that is going to knock down the Babylonian kingdoms, that is going to come and destroy them like the chaff on the threshing floor, that no place is going to be found for them, and the stone that smote the image that becomes a great mountain, aka its own nation, and fills the whole earth, that's Revelation being discussed. That's Jesus's kingdom. Well, how do we know? Well, Psalm 118:22 is a great place to go to remind us who the stone is that they rejected. Right? Psalm 118:22 tells us the stone which the builders refused is become the headstone of this corner. This is the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes. This is the day which the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Right? We already know who the stone is. We know who our rock is. And so this stone that is more powerful than the gold, silver, bronze monstrosity is Christ. And he will be the thing that destroys all the nations that are Babylonian based. And again, we live in a Babylonian kingdom right now because the entire world is given over to Satan. Right? We live the way of the exile right now. We live like Daniel did. Okay? And so this dream, Daniel's already done the impossible by being able to tell Nebuchadnezzar what his dream was. And we don't hear from Nebuchadnezzar that, oh yeah, the dream was right, Daniel. Daniel just launches into the interpretation of it, which again, he leaves out Christ. He doesn't really mention too much that the stone is Christ, but we know it from our studies and from what we've seen and what we've lived through in history and what has transpired. And so we will get into the interpretation of the dream and what happens to Daniel as a result of that interpretation in our next discussion. Okay, so hopefully that's interesting to you. Nebuchadnezzar's dream is very important for end time prophecy and for continuing ongoing prophecy, for understanding the kingdom of Babylonia, the kingdom of Babylon that we're in even unto this day. So I hope this is helpful. I will upload the second part of chapter 2 next time.